What would you do if your wife looked you in the eye over breakfast and casually announced, "I've decided we're in an open relationship now. I'm already seeing someone"? I didn't say a word. I didn't yell. I just walked out. But less than an hour later, a text message lit up my phone. It was from her best friend. And what she said? Well, it was a green light I never knew I needed. This is a story about betrayal, unexpected allies, and discovering your own worth when you've been pushed to the limit. If you love stories where the underdog finally gets the upper hand, you are in the right place. Before we dive in, please help this community grow. Hit that like button, subscribe to Inspiration Seeker, and comment down below. Let us know what you would have done in my shoes. Your support means everything, and it helps us keep bringing you these stories. It was a Tuesday, just a Tuesday. The kind of clear, sharp morning we get in the Denver suburbs, where the sunlight streams in and makes you feel like everything is exactly as it should be. I was at the kitchen island, nursing my first cup of black coffee, scrolling through architectural news on my tablet. I'm David. I'm an architect. I like things to be methodical, planned, and stable. My life was built on solid foundations. Or so I thought. Across from me was my wife, Linda. If I was a foundation, she was a whirlwind. She was a social media strategist, ambitious, impulsive, and always chasing the next bright, shiny thing. She wasn't drinking coffee. She was staring into her phone while sipping a bright green spinach smoothie. The silence was comfortable, normal, until she broke it. "Oh, by the way," she said, her thumb still scrolling, "I've decided we're in an open relationship now." The world stopped. The tablet in my hand felt suddenly heavy. I looked up, certain I'd misheard her. "I'm sorry, what?" She finally looked up, annoyed, as if I'd interrupted her. "We're open. I think it would be healthy for us. I'm already seeing someone. I'm already seeing someone." The words didn't just sting. They felt like a physical blow. This wasn't a discussion. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a declaration. Ooh. The word came out before I could stop it, tasting like ash. Linda actually shrugged. A casual, dismissive shrug. "His name is Robert. He's a photographer. It's not a big deal, David. It's just what I need right now." I stared at her. The woman I had built a life with. The woman I shared a mortgage with. She had just detonated our marriage with all the casualness of ordering takeout. I felt the nausea rise, cold and sharp. She was waiting for me to yell, to cry, to make a scene. But I'm methodical. I'm planned. I didn't give her the satisfaction. I quietly placed my coffee cup down on the granite countertop. I stood up. I walked to the hook by the door, took my jacket, and grabbed my car keys. "David, don't be so dramatic," she called out, her voice finally holding a trace of uncertainty. "We need to discuss the rules." But I was already out the door, the cool Denver air hitting my face. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be there. I didn't have a destination. I just drove. I found myself on the familiar highway heading west toward the foothills, the car climbing in altitude as my mind spiraled. Red Rocks. That's where I ended up. I pulled into the empty upper lot. The vast amphitheater silent in the morning light, the red monolith stark against the blue sky. This was my thinking spot, the place I came to when a design problem at work felt unsolvable. But this wasn't a blueprint I could just redraft. My entire marriage, my home, the future I thought I was building, it all felt like a lie. Linda's words echoed in the silence of the car. "I'm already seeing someone. His name is Robert." How long? How many nights when she was working late at a networking event was she with him? How many times had she smiled at me over dinner, knowing she was betraying me? The humiliation was worse than the anger. She hadn't just cheated. She had tried to rewrite the terms of our life to justify it. She didn't want a divorce. She wanted a healthy arrangement. She wanted me as her stable foundation, her safety net, while she got to be a whirlwind. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, just staring at the skyline of the city in the distance. I felt completely, utterly alone, a pawn in her game. Then my phone buzzed on the console. I glanced at it, expecting it to be Linda, probably texting me a list of her rules. But the name on the screen wasn't hers. It was Mary. Mary, Linda's best friend since their sorority days at Boulder. Her ride or die. My heart sank. She was probably calling to do damage control for Linda, to tell me to be reasonable. I almost let it go to voicemail, but the phone buzzed again. This time, a text. I opened it. The message was short, but it changed everything. Linda just told the group chat, bragging about her open relationship. Honestly, David, I've always thought you were too good for her. She doesn't deserve you. Drinks and dinner tonight? My treat. I must have read that text 5 times. I've always thought you were too good for her. It was a lifeline from the most unexpected person on earth. Mary wasn't just a friend. She was Linda's best friend, her maid of honor, the person who helped Linda pick out her wedding dress. For Mary to send this message, it meant she wasn't just being polite. It meant she was done, too. It meant what I was seeing at home wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern Linda's own friends were sick of. My anger, which had been a cold, numbing fog, began to sharpen. It found a focus. This wasn't just grief anymore. It was a calculation. I looked at the clock on the car's dashboard. 9:35 a.m. Less than an hour had passed since my life had been demolished. But my pulse was steadying. My architect's mind, the one that sees a problem and looks for a structural solution, kicked in. Linda had made her move, thinking she held all the cards. But she'd miscalculated. She forgot about Mary. I picked up the phone, my fingers tapping the screen with a new sense of purpose. Thank you, Mary. That means more than you know. I typed. Then I paused. This couldn't just be two friends grabbing a casual drink. This needed to be a statement. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I chose a place that was expensive, public, and impossible to mistake for a sympathy visit. How about the Capitol Grill? 8 p.m. The reply came back almost instantly. See you at 8. Just 3 words. But it felt like a contract being signed, an alliance being formed. I put the phone down and took a deep, steadying breath for the first time that morning. I was no longer the victim who had fled his own home. I was a man with a plan. Linda wanted an open relationship. Fine. But she wasn't going to be the only one playing. And I wasn't just playing for keeps. I was playing to win. This wasn't about saving my marriage. That ship had sailed the moment she said, Robert. This was about strategy. This was about my future. I didn't go back to Red Rocks. I drove straight downtown. I sat in my parked car for 10 minutes, not in a fog, but in focused silence. I searched for Best Divorce Attorneys, Denver. I spent the next hour making calls, not to the cheap, advertised firms, but to the top-tier, cutthroat ones, the kind of lawyers who don't just divide assets but protect them. I secured a consultation for Thursday morning. Step 1. The rest of the day was a blur of tactical movements. I went to the bank and opened a new, private checking account. I documented the text message from Linda. I was methodical. I finally returned home late in the afternoon. The house was quiet. Linda's Tesla was gone. Of course it was. She was probably working late. Or perhaps more accurately, celebrating her newfound freedom with Robert. The thought barely registered. The emotional wound from the morning had already begun to cauterize, replaced by a cold resolve. I went straight upstairs. I showered, letting the hot water wash away the morning shock. I stood in our walk-in closet, looking at my side. My clothes were all David. Sensible, muted, professional. Linda always said I dressed too kaku, her code for too boring. She preferred the flashy, untucked look of men like photographer, I supposed. Tonight, I wasn't dressing for her. I wasn't even dressing for Mary. I was dressing for myself. I bypassed my usual gray and charcoal suits. I reached way into the back and pulled out the one I loved, a sharp, tailored navy blue suit that Linda claimed was too formal for Denver. I put on a crisp white shirt and a silk tie. I even used expensive cologne, the one I'd stopped wearing because she said it was overpowering. I looked at my reflection in the full-length mirror, the man who had stared broken, At the Denver skyline from Red Rocks was gone. In his place stood someone else. The shock had settled. The foundation of my life had cracked, but I wasn't crumbling with it. I was going to build something new. And tonight was a groundbreaking. The Capitol Grill was bustling for a Tuesday. I arrived at 7:58 p.m. Methodical, punctual. The maitre d' led me toward the main dining room, but I spotted her immediately. Mary wasn't waiting at the bar. She had secured a quiet, high-back booth in the corner. The kind of booth you choose for privacy, not for show. She looked up as I approached, a small, nervous smile on her face. "David, you clean up nice," she said, her voice low. "So do you, Mary. Thank you for this." "I'll order a bottle," she said, signaling the sommelier. "A good one. We need it." The small talk was brief, almost non-existent. The moment the waiter poured the deep red Cabernet and stepped away, Mary leaned in. There was no sympathy in her eyes, just a shared, quiet anger. She'd been seeing him for 6 months, David. I gripped the stem of my wine glass. 6 months. "Yes," Mary said, her gaze unflinching. "His name is Robert. He's exactly her type. All flash, no substance. She met him at some tech bro networking party. Hubungan Terbuka." She scoffed, swirling her wine. That was just her exit strategy, David. Or rather, her non-exit strategy. She was testing the waters to see if she could keep her comfortable life with you and have him on the side. When you just walked out this morning, it terrified her. She thought you'd beg. I processed this. It made a sick kind of sense. Linda didn't want a divorce. She just wanted permission to betray me. Why are you telling me this, Mary? You're her best friend. Mary took a long sip of her wine. I was, for years. But I'm tired, David. I'm tired of her ego. I'm tired of her using people. She treats everyone, including me, like a pawn in her game. She's not the person I became friends with at Boulder. And honestly, I can't stand by and watch her do this to you. You've only ever been good to her. She paused, then delivered the final blow. She's been moving money. You need to check your finances. She's been moving money. The words landed on the table harder than the bronze centerpiece. What do you mean, moving money? Mary didn't flinch. Linda's smart, David, but she's also arrogant. She brags. About 2 weeks ago, she transferred a significant amount, I'm guessing at least $50,000, from your joint savings account into a new private one. She told me, and another friend over mimosas called her Freedom Fund. Just in case, she said, you didn't react well to her new life. Freedom Fund. So, this morning was a spontaneous decision. It was a premeditated attack, planned weeks in advance. The betrayal was deeper than I could have imagined. I was just staring at my wine, my knuckles white on the stem, but Mary wasn't finished. She's a social media strategist, Mary continued, her voice dripping with irony. She's all about image, but I'm a financial manager, David. I'm all about the numbers. The image she's projecting doesn't match the math, and the math says she's planning to leave you high and dry. That single piece of information, the Freedom Fund, was the ammunition I needed. It was the proof. It was the key to my own strategy. A strange thing happened then. The anger I felt didn't make me want to yell. It made me clear-headed. The conversation shifted. For the first time, we weren't just talking about Linda. Mary asked me what I was going to do. I found myself telling her the truth, not just about the divorce, but about my life, about how I put my own dream on hold, the dream of leaving the corporate firm and starting my own boutique architectural practice, because Linda wanted stability of my big salary. She listened, really listened. When I finished, she didn't offer pity. She offered advice. David, she said, leaning forward, you use this. You use her arrogance. You get that consultation, and you tell your lawyer about that fund. That's financial misconduct during a marriage. That's your leverage. We were no longer just a grieving husband and a guilty friend. We were two professionals sitting at a table, sketching out the blueprint for a hostile takeover. An alliance was formed right there, over an expensive steak and a bottle of Cabernet, cemented not by romance, but by mutual respect, and, yes, by a common enemy. I got home just after 11. The lights were on in the living room, bathing the entryway in a harsh glare. Linda was on the couch, feet tucked under her, scrolling on her phone. She looked up when I closed the door, and her face was a mask of annoyance. This wasn't the look of a guilty wife. It was a look of a manager whose employee had missed a deadline. "Where have you been?" she demanded. "You didn't answer my text. I thought we were going to talk about the rules." There it was, the sheer audacity, the rules for her affair, the Freedom Fund, the 6 months of lies. The old David, the one from 8 a.m. this morning, would have been crushed. He would have pleaded. He would have asked why. But the new David, the one who just shared a $400 dinner with her best friend, simply loosened his tie. "I was out," I said, my voice quiet level. I didn't stop to engage. I just started walking toward the stairs. She scrambled off the couch, following me. "You were out? Out where?" "David, you can't just walk away when we're talking about something this important." I stopped at the bottom of the staircase and turned. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. All that was left was a cold, clear focus of a problem that needed to be solved. "You were out, Linda." "I was out. Seems we're both just following your new healthy lifestyle." Her mouth opened, then closed. This wasn't in her script. I wasn't supposed to be calm. I wasn't supposed to be fine. My indifference was a brick wall she had just run into at full speed. "Good night," I said, and I went upstairs. That night set the tone for the entire week. A bitter cold war descended on our beautiful Denver home. We lived like polite, icy strangers. I slept in the guest room. I was up and gone before her smoothie was even blended. I came home late. I was unfailingly, chillingly polite. When she tried to talk about Robert, I'd say, "I'm busy, Linda," and retreat to my home office. But I wasn't designing buildings. I was on the phone with my lawyer. I was printing out bank statements. I was quietly and methodically documenting the end of my marriage, gathering the precise stones I would use to dismantle the life she thought she had secured. Her confidence began to crack. My calm was unnerving her more than any fight ever could. She needed my reaction. She needed me to be the stable, predictable husband. But that man was gone. He had walked out the door that Tuesday morning and never come back. The stalemate lasted for almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks of me living in my own home like a ghost, a quiet, polite phantom who only passed through. I could see her patience fraying. Her plan was backfiring. The point of an open relationship, for her, was to keep me in my neat little box while she went off and played. But I wasn't in the box anymore. I was out, and my silence was driving her insane. She was losing control of the narrative, and for a social media strategist, that was a fate worse than death. She needed to reestablish her dominance. She needed to prove to herself, and probably to Robert, that I was still the pathetic, predictable husband. On Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Linda. "Hey," it read, "big night. Robert and I are grabbing cocktails at the Cooper Lounge tonight at 9. You should come. Seriously, it'll be a good way to normalize this. Maybe you can even meet someone." I stared at the message. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it. Normalize this. Maybe you can meet someone. It wasn't an invitation. It was a power play. She was parading her affair and inviting me to sit in the front row and applaud. She wanted me to see him, to see them, to be confronted with my replacement, so I'd finally break, so I'd get angry or sad, so I'd be the one to make a scene while she looked on with pity. An old, familiar anger flare for a moment, but I pushed it down. This wasn't a threat. This was an opportunity. I smiled at my phone. The architect in me saw the flaw in her design. She had built a trap, but she left the back door wide open for me. I typed back a simple reply. "That's a surprisingly good idea. Linda, a fresh start." She replied almost instantly, "Great. See you there." I waited a beat. Then I added, "Do you mind if I bring a friend?" The 3 dots appeared. She was typing, then she stopped. She was probably calculating. Was I bringing a lawyer? A sad, moping colleague? She must have decided it was harmless, that I was just trying to save face. Of course. The more the merrier. Her text finally came through, dripping with false magnanimity. Perfect. I replied, see you at 9. I immediately opened my other conversation thread. Change of plans tonight. I texted Mary. We have a date. The Cooper Lounge at 9. Dress to kill. The Cooper Lounge is not a dive bar. It's an elegant second-floor mezzanine bar overlooking the Great Hall of Union Station. It's all velvet chairs, marble tables, and classic cocktails. It's the kind of place you go to be seen, which, of course, was exactly why Linda chose it. I arrived at 8:50 p.m. I got a table, not a booth, one with a clear view of the entrance. I ordered a neat bourbon and waited. I wasn't nervous. I was an architect reviewing a final blueprint. At 9:05, they made their entrance. Linda first, wearing a dress that was definitely new, and behind her, him, Robert. Mary had been right. All flash, no substance. He was a guy who wore a leather jacket indoors, with artfully messy hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a man who thought he was the main character in everyone's life. Linda spotted me, and her face lit up with a sickeningly triumphant, pitying smile. She led him over, her hand possessively on his arm. David, you made it, she said, her voice loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. She was projecting. This is Robert. Robert gave me a nod, a lazy, appraising look. Hey, man, heard a lot about you. Gutsy of you to show. I just smiled a thin, polite smile. Robert. So, Linda said, sliding into the chair, where's your friend? Did they cancel? Her tone was dripping with condescension, just daring me to be alone. No, I said, taking a sip of my bourbon. She just texted. She's parking. Linda's smile faltered for a half-second. And right on cue, the hostess let her in. Mary, she wasn't just dressed to kill. She was an assassin. She wore a simple, elegant black dress that made every other woman in the room look like she was trying too hard. She moved with the kind of confidence that didn't need to be loud. Linda's back was partially to the entrance. She didn't see her, but Robert did. His eyes widened. Mary walked straight to our table. Linda, hearing the footsteps, turned around. Her face, which had been set in a mask of smug pity, just collapsed. Mary, what are you? Mary didn't even look at her. Her eyes were on me. She walked right up to my side, leaned down, and gave me a light, deliberate kiss on the cheek. Sorry I'm late, honey, she said, her voice clear and smooth. Then she turned her bright, dangerous smile on a completely gobsmacked Linda. Linda was speechless. Her face went from white to red to a shade of pure, unadulterated rage. Mary? What are you doing here? With him. Mary simply took the empty seat beside me and signaled the waiter. Just having a drink, Lynn, she said, finally meeting her gaze. Isn't that what we're supposed to do in an open relationship? Linda's reaction was exactly what she had wanted from me all along. It was pure, unbridled chaos. You, she sputtered, her voice rising, finally losing that cool, strategic mask. She pointed a trembling finger at Mary. You're supposed to be my best friend. You're sleeping with my husband? The nearby tables fell silent. People were turning to look. Robert, the main character, looked completely lost, like an actor who had wandered onto the wrong set and didn't know his lines. We're just having a drink, Linda, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through her rising panic. Per your rules. Or do those rules only apply to you? This isn't an open relationship. This is a betrayal, she shrieked. Yes, it is, I said. I calmly reached into the inner pocket of my suit, the one I had worn just for this occasion, and pulled out a folded set of documents. I didn't slam them on the table. I placed them, methodically. What is that? She whispered, her rage momentarily replaced by a cold dread. That, I said, is from my lawyer, the one I hired 2 weeks ago, just after our breakfast chat. Her eyes went wide. He's a very good lawyer, Linda, and he was very interested to learn about the 6-month affair with Robert, which, as you know, predates your announcement. He was even more interested in the $50,000 you transferred out of our joint savings into your personal freedom fund. It turns out judges call it dissipation of marital assets. It's a very bad look. Linda was completely white. She stared at the papers, then at me, then at Mary, who was now calmly sipping the cocktail the waiter had just delivered. Linda had walked into her own trap, and it had snapped shut. I stood up. I straightened my suit jacket. Robert was already sinking in his chair. Realizing he was tied to a losing bet, Linda just stared at the papers, the architect of her own destruction. I looked at Mary. I'm thinking dinner at my place? She smiled, a real smile this time, bright and genuine. I'd like that, she said, standing up and looping her arm through mine. We walked out to Cooper Lounge together, leaving Linda in the spotlight she always craved, but for all the wrong reasons. We didn't look back. That was 6 months ago. The divorce was finalized last week. My lawyer, using the Freedom Fund and the proof of premeditated infidelity, ensured the settlement was efficient. Linda got to keep Robert. I got to keep the house and my dignity. And my new firm, David James Design, just landed its first major client. It was a referral, of course, from my new financial manager.